your questions and ask them in the chat, either openly to the group at large. Alternatively, do feel comfortable to just privately ask a question to me if that makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. And I'll be very happy to address those questions either openly or anonymously to Jo as the session progresses, probably a little later on as we reach the end of the session. Jo, over to you.
Thank you so much, Emma. It's always so weird to have someone read out
Yes.
a bio. But yeah, I'm glad you've got a sense of me now. So this session is going to be an opportunity to explore ways to find calm amidst the chaos, and really hinge on this well-being topic that we've been talking about. A lot of what I say you'll know already. I'm not going to be telling you anything particularly new. Sometimes we just need to be reminded. And the thread of everything I'm going to be talking about in the session today is kindness, because from my perspective, until we start to really practice authentic kindness towards ourselves in terms of finding time for ourselves and pausing and really tuning in, it's going to be really difficult to make that time for ourselves to find that calm amidst the chaos. I don't know if anyone else was in Joanna's talk about the digital detox. So much of what she said was just brilliant, because it just feeds completely into what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, I have got some slides, but I am hoping that I'm planning for this to be a practical session, so we can actually practice certain things to remind our bodies and our minds what calm might actually feel like, and taking into consideration the many, many stresses that we're all under and the realities of the world as it is today. This is about small steps. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. So yeah, as Emma said, I'm a mindfulness coach and a teacher, because I teach various courses in mindfulness. Let's see what we've got here. So I always think it's really good to frame this type of session by really understanding where we've come from as a species, because it feeds into what's happening to us now. And Emma did cover this a little bit in her talk as well, about the primitive brain. So just as an illustration, it's always good to see these things in picture. This is us many thousands of years ago, much more basic brain than we have now. And it was really designed at the time to be in survival mode. I'm sure you've all heard about fight, flight, and freeze. And our threats were very tangible in those days. There we have the saber-toothed tiger, we have the spear. Do we fight? Do we run? Do we freeze? None of this is rocket science. The body responded by releasing relatively the hormones that we needed to do whatever it is we needed to do to survive: cortisol, adrenaline, etc. So what would happen is we'd become obviously stressed because of this threat. Then we would defeat the threat in some way, or we'd escape. And what would then happen is we would then come back to a relatively calm place until the next threat came along. Think of a gazelle. If anyone's ever watched any nature programs or been lucky enough to go on safari, if you've ever seen a gazelle or an antelope run from prey, what you find is as soon as they're safe, let's say they haven't been caught and they're safe, they just go back to grazing. And they're very chilled again. Once their heart rate drops, they're happy just to crack on. There's no thought about how, God, well, aren't we lucky we got away from it that time? You know, they don't think, I'm not going to stand in that space again. There's no rumination. As far as that animal's concerned, it's safe and it just cracks on. We can't do that. We don't have the capacity to do that anymore, because our brains have evolved so much we can analyze and overthink. So this is 10,000 or more years ago. But now what we have are much less tangible threats, okay? So our modern day life is designed now to be stressful. You've got obviously the influx of social media, and as Joanna was saying, our attention is in demand. She made the most brilliant point, which I never heard before. If you think about the words paying attention, there's an economy there. You give up something to bring your attention to something else. So there is a attention war going on at the moment. So you pick up the phone to check the weather, was Joanna's example, and 20 minutes later, you still don't know what the weather is because you've been drawn into other areas of your phone. And we are overwhelmed by this. And this is happening all the time. Our attention is being pulled in millions of directions, which is, when we put social media into the mix of that, it can be very overwhelming and have quite a strong detrimental effect on our stress levels, because what we then end up having are really intangible threats like the news, where you end up feeling quite helpless when you watch the news. And that is a kind of threat reaction. So instead of in the olden days, our threat going down and then we felt safe again and calm, we're actually now living at what is quite a normal but high level of stress on a relatively regular basis, especially if you take in relationships. Where in the last year, relationships have had probably more tests than ever before. Living together, not getting a lot of space from each other, blended families, all of those stresses that come with that. Money worries, Zoe mentioned earlier from the survey that was done, that 50% of people were saying that they're now worse off financially. The stress of financial stress can completely and utterly override any other life experience. Obviously, we're in a pandemic, health worries, we've got worries of other people's health, the uncertainty that comes with this kind of situation. And then, of course, work, or looking for work, or the overwhelm of work. One of the things Joanna showed was how many hours of the day we're working 2 more hours of a day now because of the pandemic. That doesn't really leave a lot of time for fun, which is another point that Zoe made, how important it is to have fun and laughter, me time, play time. Where does that come in? Especially with all the time we're kind of stuck scrolling. So I wanted to just set the scene. Sorry, it's a bit depressing, but let's move on to where we go with this information, because that's what's important. So, a bit more bad news. So just to kind of reiterate why it's important that we're aware of this level of stress in our life, look at the side effects when we stay at this high level of stress. And what my point is going to come to is that we are staying at this high level of stress because we're not very awake and aware of our activities. We're very reactive to what's put in front of us. And I think, sorry to pull on Joanna again, but she made a brilliant point about intention. Having an intention and an awareness, so we choose where our attention goes. We might notice these things in our body: anxiety, headaches, trouble concentrating. Maybe we get angry easily, reactive, tummy problems, fatigue, maybe a decreased sex drive. Maybe we have rashes on our skin. These can all be stress related. And very often we don't really notice our body day to day, unless, of course, something goes wrong. And then we're like, why is my body going wrong? What we get frustrated about it without actually having a deeper inquiry as to what's actually going on here, and tuning in more deeply into what the causes might be. And very often stress is the cause of a lot of these physical ailments. So I always like to draw on this particular quote. I don't know if I'm sure you've all heard of Viktor Frankl. In case you haven't, he survived Auschwitz amongst other horrors of the Second World War. And he went in as a psychiatrist. So he went in almost with an interested eye on how people were going to behave in this type of extreme, dire conditions. And he came up with this quote, which I think really sums up what we're saying here, which is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And it's in that space is our power to choose our response. And of course, it's in our response that lies our growth and our freedom. Going back to Zoe's point about perspective, how can we have perspective if we're not paying attention, if we're not aware of what's going on? Between stimulus and response is a space, but how do you create that space? How do you tune into that space? So much of our well-being lives in that space, that ability to pause. And when our days are very, very busy and we're doing to get to the next doing, we're not creating that space of reflection, tuning in, conscious intention of choice, because we're just reactive. I'm exaggerating here, but you get the picture. Our busy lives do prevent us from having that capacity to pause. And studies now are showing more and more that without the pause, without the stillness, our mental health is suffering hugely. So we're going to talk about that pause now. But before that, so much, I think, of the reasons why we don't find this time for ourselves can be guilt, or a narrative that's saying we've got to just keep going, keep busy, keep doing to get to the end result, without really pausing to really consider whether that is the most helpful and kind of useful way of doing things. It can be quite interesting to turn that on its head a little bit and start to consider that the more we take care of ourselves and our mental health and our well-being, the more productive we can be, the more effective, the more we can pay attention, have better concentration, the better we can be in relationships, not only to others, but to ourselves. And we draw on the oxygen mask principle here, which is obviously when you get on an aeroplane, the oxygen comes down. You need to put your own oxygen mask on first before you support the person next to you, before you can take care of anybody else. Because unless you're in your best state to take care of other people, you just can't do it. Not really effectively, not without frustration, resentment, anger. So just consider that kind of oxygen mask principle as a permission to take that time for yourself. There's a quote by Lucille Zimmerman: taking good care of yourself means the people in your life receive the best of you rather than what is left of you. If we think about a cup that gets filled when we wake up and then we're filling other people's cups all through the day, well, what's filling our cups back up? It's about how do we keep our cup full to take care of ourselves and others. And I came across this quote recently, which I thought really reinforced this need to pause and take care of ourselves. So Arianna Huffington, who I'm sure we all know, Huffington Post: the greatest obstacle for me has been the voice in my head that I call my obnoxious roommate. Now, you don't have to join in here. I'm going to just stop sharing for a minute. I'd just like to just see from the group, does anyone else think that they have an obnoxious roommate in their head? I know I certainly do. I'm just having a look through. Oh, most people have got their cameras off. I'm sure without your camera on, you've still got your hands up. Most people have an obnoxious roommate in their heads. Very unhelpful to most of our kind of daily life. So let's hear what she says about this obnoxious roommate. I wish someone would invent a tape recorder that we could attach to our brains to record everything we tell ourselves. We would realize how important it is to stop this negative self-talk, how to start being kinder to ourselves. And I'm going to let you into a little secret. There is such a tape recorder. And actually, when we meditate, that's really what we're doing. We're starting to pay attention to the thoughts that are crossing through our minds, that are pervading our lives. We start to become aware. And the more aware we are of our thoughts, the more capacity we have to decide, are they true? Are they helpful? Is this serving me? What's driving me? What's helping me make the right decisions? Where's my gut truth? If we don't pause long enough to tune in, to notice, how can we ever know? How can we ever ask these important questions? Now, I'm not here to advocate meditation as the solve of all of our problems. Please don't get me wrong. Just from personal experience, and for those that I have supported over the years, I have seen and do continue to see a significant transformation in people who are able to stop, to pause, to tune in, to take time out for themselves. We're going to do a bit of a practice now. I'm going to show you a picture. Oh no, I haven't got the picture. I took it out, but the picture is, if I had it, is of a boat. And the boat represents our mind, which is carried by currents, by the weather, by conditions. Because our mind is, because we're affected by everything that's going on externally and internally. What you can also see in the picture is an anchor. And that anchor is our body. And our body is what keeps us tethered to the present moment. Because when we continue to maybe get future think, so what's going to happen next, worrying about the future, planning for the future, always projecting to the future, driving forward, we're missing what's actually happening in the present moment. So too, if we're lost in the past, I should have done that. Why didn't that happen that way? Why did I have that conversation? Again, we're taking ourselves out of the present moment. But the body is what keeps us present, because all of our senses are what are happening in real time. So I say that because we're going to do a little practice now. And if you've never sat in meditation before, maybe it's easier to think of it more as a relaxation, because sometimes I think meditation comes with a connotation that says you've got to sit cross-legged, you've got to clear your mind, you've got to feel zen, and at the end of it, if you're not really relaxed, you've done it wrong. Now, that's not what meditation is at all. Let me just make the record really straight here. You will never clear your mind of thoughts, ever, ever, ever. But you may become more aware of those thoughts and therefore have more agency over them. Meditation is literally noticing that you're having a thought, that you're distracted, that you're lost on a train of thought you might not want to be on, and coming back to the focus of the body. That's it. And you might have to do it 100 times. Each time we notice, we have a choice. Do we want to stay thinking about this thought, or do we want to come back to the body? And once we start to kind of develop and practice that capacity for choice, we start to see it kind of come into many areas of our life. Do I want to be looking at the phone right now? Do I want to be having this argument right now? We start to be a lot more conscious of the choices that we're making, and we're practicing this in meditation. The other thing to point out here is it's an opportunity to practice kindness. Because if we notice we've been distracted and we go, I'm so rubbish at this, I can't focus my mind, I'm always distracted, I'm never going to be able to meditate. It's just another stick to beat ourselves with, to kind of create more stress in our life. The idea is we choose to be kind. Okay, that's interesting. I was lost thinking about lunch tomorrow, or worrying about this interview, or whatever it is. Okay, then we can be a bit curious about that's where our mind was, and just come back to the body and start again. So what we're going to practice, actually, if you wanted to ask any questions while I set up this particular practice, it's only going to be about 2-3 minutes long. Feel free to put it in the chat and I'll have a look if you've got any concerns or worries about it. I'm looking at the chat now. Basically, this is called a 3-step breathing space, and it's something we use as an intervention quite a lot. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, a bit stressed, you're feeling like the day is just running by and you're not catching up with it, that treadmill feeling where you just can't keep up, just to take a 2-3 minute pause can really help to reset. Zoe was talking about perspective, can really help to reset our perspective, for instance, and calm our nervous system. Because obviously when we're feeling threatened, overwhelmed, our nervous system's activated, and it's very hard to think straight when we get into that state. Anyone had that situation where you're so overwhelmed, you just don't know what to do first? You need to reset, activate the parasympathetic nervous system and find calm. So the first step of this 3-step breathing space is just tuning in. How am I doing just right now? What's going on for me in my body, in my mind? It's just a checking in like we do with a friend. We're checking in with ourselves. The second step is just breathing. And I'm going to introduce some counting of the breath as well, which can really help to stay focused. And then the third step, we do a deep breath in, feel the whole of our body. So what we do is we create some space in our body, because, as the day goes on and we're more on the screen, it get tighter and tighter and more constricted, just to create some space. And we'll see how that goes. So if you want to join me to do this short practice, I'm going to ring the chime that I have here, just so we have a nice sound, just to bring us into a bit of stillness. And I'll guide us completely. So just listen to my voice. If you want to turn your screen off, you're welcome to. And if you want to close down your eyes, you're more than welcome to. It can help just to kind of feel into the meditation. And maybe if you've got both feet flat on the floor, that helps. But that's it. That's all we have to do. And the rest is just leave it to me to guide you and do your best to pay attention. Okay, so close down your eyes when you're ready. So just beginning to become aware of the seat beneath this body. Just noticing the way our body meets the floor and the chair. This can take quite a lot of effort just to feel into the body space. But just seeing if we can allow ourselves to feel held by this chair. Just allowing ourselves to tune in to sensations of sitting. Maybe allowing our arms to be relaxed on our lap. Lengthening in our spine. Feeling our heads balanced on our shoulders. And checking in with our body. How are we doing just right now? What are we noticing in our body space? Maybe there's some aching or some coolness. Maybe there's some pressure, some hunger. Maybe we can notice some areas of tingling or something else. Tension maybe. We're not trying to change anything, just tuning in and noticing our body and what's here. How about our mind? Is it busy and racing or scattered? Just noticing. Try not to get too caught up with the content. And perhaps aware of our heart space. If there's any emotion we're holding just right now. Just an awareness of this body in this moment. And when we're ready, let's just become aware of our body breathing. Noticing the flow of each breath as it enters and leaves the body. Just breathing and aware of the sensation of each breath. This again can be really hard. So let's see if we can notice when we get distracted and gently and kindly come back to this breath. To just breathing and knowing we're breathing. And if you wish, you could try 7-11 breaths. So you breathe in for the count of 7 and out for the count of 11. And notice how this feels. It's going to help us to stay more focused. If those numbers are too long, you can make it 6 and 10. Whatever suits your body. But seeing if you can stay with each breath. Noticing if any tension arises and softening. We're really simplifying our lives in this moment. And just breathing and tuning in. Just right now, there's nowhere else to be. Nothing else to do. Gifting ourselves this pause, this stillness. And just breathing. And when we're ready, let's take a much deeper breath in, filling the lungs, imagining the breath spreading through the whole of this body as we sit here. And as we release the breath, allowing the body to soften and let go. Doing this 2 more times. Really allowing the body to feel spacious and wide, and allowing ourselves on the out breath to soften and let go. Final time, breath in and releasing. Feeling the whole of the body as it is just right now, and taking a moment to check in again. How are we doing? Do we feel any different from that pause? Just noticing. And when we're ready, becoming aware of the space around our body and slowly beginning to open our eyes, wriggling our fingers and toes and wrists and ankles. And turning on your screen if you wish to come back to allowing me to see your lovely faces. And if anyone wants to write in the chat what you noticed, or if you really struggled, or if you've got any questions, feel free to do so, because that 3-step breathing space is taught in every meditation program in the world. Basically, it's really, if there was a tool in a toolbox, this would be the top of the pile. And it can be used as a way of just before you get out of bed in the morning, just to check in. How am I doing? How's my breath? How's my body? Just as a way of tuning in with ourselves. Thanks, Mark. Amazing. Never had so long for myself before. Yeah, we don't. Why not though? Why don't we make this time for ourselves? It's really important, this valuable tuning in time that we've somehow lost over the years, and our attention has been taken outside, an external kind of attention. But actually what's really important is that tuning in as well. What I've got here is a list of suggestions for you, tips, things that you can try throughout the day. I'm still looking at the chat. Someone mentioned that they found that sighing loudly on the breath out helps prolong the deep breath. Absolutely, Kaye, and that's brilliant for activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So that out breath, it triggers something in our body. You know, it's very, very hard to de-escalate once we feel threatened, once our body is activated. The breath is the best formula to do that. Whether we do the 3-step breathing space or we just decide to count to 10 breaths, whatever it is, as long as we're tuning into the breath and the body, we're taking ourselves out of the spiral of the overthinking, of the ruminating, of the fear, of the fear, of the fear, of the fear, coming back to the body space where it's safer and quieter and stiller. So what we've got here is ways to practice finding calm. So some of the things, sorry, I'm just going to move this out of the way. I've called this formal practice because this requires us to actually make time for it in the day. So the 3-step breathing space, which we've just done. Counting breath, which can be either part of the 3-step breathing space, or as I mentioned, as a separate thing when you're driving, when you're walking. It doesn't matter if you're lying in bed. Another one is box breath. I don't know if anyone's heard of box breath. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, in for 4, hold for 4. And all these things are supporting us to focus on the breath rather than all of the internal stress we're creating. The other thing to try, if you wish, is just to count the in-breath. It's so hard. Try getting to 10. You'd be amazed how much our brains are so busy. You know, we have about 70,000 thoughts a day. I mean, how exhausting is that? Just to take that pause to notice. Then we've got listen to meditation. I've suggested maybe Calm, Headspace, Insight Timer. These are apps that are very well known now, very well respected. I've got a few meditations now on Insight Timers. The quality of teaching and meditations are absolutely amazing on these apps. And they're like Insight Time is free, completely free. So just to try a 3-minute meditation in the day, why not? Stretch. What's the time? I think we've got a minute. Right. You can turn your cameras off for this. I'm just going to we're going to do some stretching because you will be amazed the difference a bit of a stretch can make. If you'll join me standing up, because we've all been sat down for so long. If you're self-conscious, turn your camera off. We're going to just do some 1 minute of really basic stretching. Have your feet hip width apart so you're feeling quite well supported, and keep your knees soft all the time. Okay. Have your arms loose by your sides. What we're going to do is we're going to breathe in, breathing up, bringing our arms up to the ceiling. Okay. And what I'd like to invite you to do as best you can is create length from your fingertips to your feet with your breath and your fingers. So breathing in and just really feeling that length being created throughout your whole body, okay? Now what we're going to do, I need to step back a bit for this. On the out breath, we're going to take a deep breath in now. And on the out breath, we're going to bend forward, keeping our knees really nice and soft. Now, the aim is not to reach the floor. This is not a competition for any of us, but we are going to meet the floor as best we can. So hanging forward, letting yourself really calm down. On the out breath a little bit further, and you might want to swing and sway, because what you might find is you're creating space in your ribs at your back, between your shoulder blades. Really hang, really let all that stress come out your hands. You'll let your head hang,
In each time you breathe out, see if you can go just a little bit further, see how that feels. You'd be amazed the difference this can make. Now we're going to very gently on the in-breath, start to unravel back up. Please don't come up too quickly. Take your time, there's no rush. Let your head come last. And once you're back up to standing, what we're going to do is some shoulder rolls, just bringing the shoulders forward, up, round and back, really squeezing together at the front, coming up to the ears, back and down, and the other way. Just rolling the shoulders forward and back. Okay, and now relaxing the shoulders. God, can you feel the difference already? Now interlacing the fingers and just pushing them in front. So you're creating that space again between your shoulder blades. Oh, really allowing yourself to go as far as your body is safe and comfortable to do so. Now we're going to do it behind. So pulling the fingers together and just very gently creating that space in the front of the body, maybe leaning back a little bit, getting that space between the ribs. Take a breath in and release the arms. And let's just shake for a moment. Shake, shake, shake. Okay. I mean, literally, that was, if 1 minute at most. Does anyone truthfully feel different now? Sitting here. Come on, let's hear in the chat. That make a difference to anybody?
I can tell you I do, yes.
Energized again. Yeah. Yes. Honestly, do you know what? Do you know what I heard the other day? We are the only species of mammal that doesn't stretch. As a standard thing, like when we wake up and when we move around, the only species of mammal that doesn't stretch. That, by the way, is not because we don't need to. It's just because we've forgotten how. And just that 2 minutes, can you imagine starting the day, pausing, checking in, feeling your breath, having a stretch? That's 5 minutes of your life, by the way. 5 minutes of your life. Joanna showed this frightening scale that showed from 2007 to 2017 how much less time we make for ourselves, our personal time. It's down to like an hour or something a day. And that's for all of our connecting with people, connecting with our hobbies, doing things we love, you know, all that stuff. Because so much of it is taken up working and social media and technology time. So just give yourself that 5 minutes. Emma, you're going to say something?
I'm conscious of time. That's
okay.
A splendid, well, we have about 2 minutes left.
Oh, can I finish that quick last column then?
Yes.
I'll fly through it because it is my last slide. So daily routine activity. Know what you're doing while you're doing it. Pay attention, like brushing your teeth, walking, eating, drinking your cup of tea. Tune in, let your senses be activated. It brings joy, it brings life. Do one thing at a time. This has been mentioned 3 times already today. Serial monotasking. We're no good when we multitask. Tune into points of physical contact. Feel yourself grounded. Feel your feet on the floor. Connect with the chair beneath you. Don't even have to close your eyes to do that. Do it standing, sitting, wherever you are. Spend time in nature. Hug a tree. Don't have to hug a tree. Look up at a tree. You know, remember, these trees have been here way before us and they'll be here way after us. It gives you perspective. Or a sense of wonder that the world is such an amazing place. We've forgotten, we've lost that connection. Practice gratitude for every negative difficulty we have in our life. We can choose to find something we're grateful for. It's not difficult. There is always something we can feel grateful for if we try, if we look for it. Have boundaries, say no, make strong intentions, choose. Be conscious of the choices you're making. Have good sleep hygiene. That's been mentioned already. Try to get your good night's sleep. Do the things you need to do in the lead up to bedtime. And finally, be curious. Be curious about life, about yourself, about others, like a child. See if we can bring that back, that curiosity. Oh yes. And finally, I'm sure you've all heard the Serenity Prayer, but so much suffering comes when we try to change the things that we can't. So may I be granted the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And the wisdom comes from the space that we find between the stimulus and the response in the pause. And that's that's, I don't know, there, we got there.
You did. If I could just ask, I want to thank you, Jo. If I could ask you to just unshare your screen.
Yes, of course.
Just so we can close this session. We're technically a minute late, and we have our Q&A session starting very shortly in just 4 minutes. I want to thank you for the most wonderful, uplifting and measured session. I took part, I participated, I believe everyone did as well. And I feel a better person for it. And I'm sure I believe and I hope I speak for everyone else on the session when I also say that everyone else also hopefully feels a little bit better than they did 45 minutes ago. Your input has been fabulous this morning. Really appreciate it. Everyone, I know that Jo will be joining us for the Q&A, so we haven't seen the last of her, thank goodness. I'm going to close this session off now and see you all in a few minutes on our closing remarks and session at 12:15. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Thanks for joining.